In Nazi-occupied Vilnius, a teenager who risked death at every checkpoint became known in whispers as the girl who became the ghost of Vilnius. She repeatedly slipped past Nazi liquidation squads by pretending to be a Catholic nun. Her real name was Roza Shanina, 17 years old. Yet as stories of impossible escapes spread through the sealed ghetto, one question haunted survivors and historians alike. Who was she, and did she ever really exist? The answer leads us straight to the heart of one of World War II's most persistent legends. German troops marched into Vilnius in June 1941. Within weeks, the city's Jewish population faced new rules written in German and enforced by both foreign soldiers and local police. Streets that once bustled with families and traders were suddenly divided by wooden barricades and makeshift fences. By September, the Vilnius ghetto was established, its boundaries drawn through the heart of the old town. Stikliu, Zidu, Gaono, and Messiniu streets pressed into a cramped, sealed world. Checkpoints sprang up at every entry and exit. Armed guards, some in German uniforms, others in Lithuanian police caps, patrolled the main gates at WWII and Stikliu, stopping anyone who tried to cross. Passes were checked, pockets searched, faces studied for signs of fear or deception. A single mistake could mean arrest or worse. The Aryan corridor along WWII Street cut straight through the ghetto, off limits to Jews, and watched day and night. Inside the fences, nearly 40,000 people were forced to squeeze into a few city blocks. Food became scarce, curfews absolute, and every movement subject to suspicion. The Nazis called it liquidation when they swept through the ghetto, rounding up thousands at a time. Trucks and columns of prisoners moved toward Ponary, the forest outside Vilnius, where mass shootings became routine. In the first months alone, tens of thousands vanished. Entire families were erased in a single day. Escape seemed impossible. The network of checkpoints, patrols, and sealed streets left almost no gaps. Some tried to bribe guards or forge papers. Others hid in attics or cellars, hoping to outlast the next roundup. A few, with help from sympathetic locals or the church, attempted disguises, passing as peasants, workers, or in rare cases, members of the clergy. The risk was absolute. Anyone caught outside the ghetto without permission faced immediate execution. For those inside, the threat was constant and total. Every street corner, every gate, every uniform represented a choice between life and death. In this world, even the smallest act of resistance, slipping past a checkpoint or finding a new identity, became an act of survival against a machinery built for annihilation. At 17, Roza was already living with the kind of fear that pressed into every breath. Each time the Nazis swept through the ghetto, rounding up families for transport, she watched the faces of neighbors vanish. Word drifted through the cramped rooms and courtyards. Someone had slipped out dressed as a milkmaid, another as a laborer. For Roza, the story that would linger in whispers began with a habit, a nun's black and white robe. Origin never named, perhaps borrowed, perhaps stolen, perhaps pressed into her hands by someone whose name was lost even before the war ended. The details, passed along in fragments, say she studied the gestures of the sisters who moved through Vilnius. The way they walked with heads bowed, the rhythm of their prayers, how they made the sign of the cross. She practiced in secret, tracing the motion until it felt natural. She learned to fold her hands, to keep her eyes lowered, to answer in Polish or Lithuanian when a guard barked a question. The risk was total. A slip of Yiddish, a wrong step, a sign of fear, any could betray her. Yet the urgency of survival left no room for hesitation. On more than one occasion, Roza is said to have wrapped herself in the habit and stepped out through the ghetto gate. Checkpoints waited on every corner, manned by men who had learned to look for trembling hands, for the wrong shoes, for the nervous glance. She walked past them, heart pounding, repeating silent prayers she barely understood. Sometimes she carried a basket or a book of psalms, mimicking the daily errands of the city's real nuns. Each crossing meant moving through a world that had been sealed off, where every street had become a border and every uniform a question she could not afford to answer. No one remembers how many times she tried this or how many times she succeeded. Some say she returned to the ghetto to bring news or food, others believe she vanished into the city, living as a shadow among the faithful. The habit itself, its fate unknown, became part of the legend. What remains is the image of a girl who learned to disappear in plain sight. Her survival balanced on the edge of every gesture. In the silence that followed each escape, Roza's story grew, half warning, half hope, passed on by those who needed to believe that escape, however unlikely, was still possible. Archivists begin with the basics: names, dates, places, all entered into digital search fields and handwritten logbooks. Every known variant is tried, for example, Roza and Rosa, and surnames Shanina, Shanin, Shanina, Sanina. Each spelling is checked against the Vilnius ghetto registration lists, the May 1942 census, and pre-war address books. The Jewish Gen Holocaust database, Yad Vashem Names database, and USHMM records are combed line by line, filtering for gender, birth years, and residence. Nothing appears for a Jewish Roza Shanina in Vilnius, not in the ghetto lists, not among survivors, not among the dead. Civil birth registers from 1926 to 1928 are searched in the Lithuanian Central State Archives with attention to every possible transliteration. No Roza Shanina is recorded as born or living in Vilnius. School records, transport lists, repatriation rolls, each source is methodical and cross-checked. The process is slow, deliberate, and exacting. Even the smallest hint, a partial surname or an ambiguous entry, is flagged for review. The search expands to include Polish, Belarusian, and Russian state repositories. Again, every spelling and diminutive is tested in multiple languages. No matches surface. The only Roza Shanina found is the Soviet sniper from Arkhangelsk, her life documented in military records and memoirs far from Vilnius. With each negative result, the evidence accumulates. No trace of a Jewish girl by this name in the ghetto, no record of a nun's disguise, no testimony linking her to Vilnius. The absence itself becomes a finding, forcing the investigation to look beyond the name toward the possibility of mistaken identity or legend. Roza Georgievna Shanina was born in the northern Russian city of Arkhangelsk in 1924. Her story, preserved in Soviet military archives and personal diaries, is the story of a sniper, a woman who volunteered for the Red Army after her brother was killed, who trained at the Central Women's Sniper Training School, and who fought on the Eastern Front until her own death in January 1945. She is credited with over 50 confirmed kills. Her life is documented in detail: school records, military commendations, battlefield letters, and the final entries of her diary. Nowhere in these records is Vilnius mentioned. No connection to the ghetto, to the city's Jewish community, or to the nun's habit that became central to the legend. The only Roza Shanina in the archives is the sniper. No Jewish girl by that name appears in the Vilnius ghetto lists, the May 1942 census, or in survivor testimony. The Lithuanian Central State Archives contain no birth or school record for a Roza Shanina in Vilnius. Searches in Polish, Belarusian, and Russian repositories yield nothing. No alternate spellings, no diminutives, no trace. Even the convent records, as fragmentary as they are, offer no clue. The ledgers of the Sisters of Charity and the Nazareth Sisters, preserved in part at the Vilnius Archdiocese, are silent on the matter of missing habits or hidden borders named Roza. The confusion runs deep. Over time, the name Roza Shanina began to appear in stories told online and in whispered retellings, blending the sniper's fame with the desperate ingenuity of ghetto escapees. The legend of the girl who vanished in plain sight, slipping past checkpoints in a nun's robe, became attached to a name that belonged to someone else entirely. The historical record draws a hard line. There is no evidence for a Jewish Roza Shanina in Vilnius, nor for an escapee who disguised herself as a nun. What survives is the absence, a silence in the archives, a gap where a life might have been. The story, powerful as it is, stands on the edge of memory and myth, a reminder of how easily names can travel between truth and legend when the facts are lost to time. Today, myth can travel faster than fact, especially when history's silences leave space for legend. As misinformation blurs the line between memory and invention, our responsibility is to seek truth, not comfort in the past. Every unexamined story shapes how we understand survival, loss, and ourselves. What do you think?